Hi, everyone. We don't do like a formal intro, Jen. This is not like the other podcast that we have like Yael doing her thing. This is like a very informal conversation.
I'm not witty enough to be Yael.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
Can I be Yael?
You can be Yael. Yes. Good luck. No, but I am so excited because I tricked my friend Jen to come on edJEWcation and have a conversation with us because I feel like you are one of my favorite people. You're so smart. I want to be you. We were just talking about who we want to be when we grow up, but I was embarrassed to say it, but I'll say it now. I want to be you when I grow up because you're actually you're
Can you tell my kids that?
You're like productive. I tell Jay all the time, like, I just wish I was productive, and you are. So
you're very productive, and you produce really important things. And ChayaLeah, the last time I talked to you, I told you how much your work has had such an impact, especially in the past 2 years.
Thank you.
Like huge. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. That's why we had you on. It was great having you. No, I'm just kidding.
And that's the show. Thanks, everybody.
Well, let me introduce who we're talking to. This is Dr. Jen Murtazashvili. I'm very good at her last name. And Jen is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh, and she heads the Center for Governance and Markets, which you're going to tell us what that is. But we are so happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. And there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. And Jay wants topics he wants to talk about. But let's start. What do you do?
What do I do? So I teach, I do research, and I do a lot of administering. So at our center, it's the Center for Governance and Markets. It's a very interesting way of saying that we explore the innovative ways people come together to solve problems. And so it's like a bottom-up way of looking at the world. And so we look at a lot of interesting issues, we look at things that you would typically think about, community level issues. But we also take that bottom up lens to look at things like foreign policy, global security, blockchain, governance of emerging technologies. So at my center, I have a small cadre of computer scientists and engineers who are working on the governance of the electromagnetic spectrum. Yeah, I know. Figure that I don't really understand it, but they're working hard on that. And I focus on the really mundane things like conflict and peace.
Wow.
And yeah.
Is your students' first test when they come to class pronouncing your last name?
It's my first test. Yeah. No, I mean, it is a mouthful. My husband's grandfather came from Georgia in the 1950s to the U.S. My maiden name, Brick, is very well known. It's an Ashkenazi name. So when I lived in Russia, I studied in Russia when I was an undergraduate. And that's when I first understood that this was a Jewish name. Because in the United States context, Brick was like brick. Right. Like I was named after a brick.
Right.
but then when they were all like, Brick, are you Jewish? And I'm like, oh, how do they all know I'm Jewish?
That's so funny.
So there was a very famous poet during the Revolutionary period. His name was Osip Brick. And his wife was named Lilia Brick. And they were married, but she was dating this other famous poet named Mayakovsky. And at one point, they lived in a threesome together, and everybody in Russia knows about that, and they know that it's a Jewish name. So,
That story turned. That took a turn I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, so people get a smile on their face when that Brick.
That's so cute.
And
that's cute.
Well, I have a co-author who lives in Ukraine who's Brick.
Oh, really?
Who has Jewish ancestry? Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So
Baruch,
Georgia
comes from Baruch. But,
that's what. Oh, really? That's
I
so
believe
interesting.
So. Yeah,
makes sense. That makes sense. So you've spent time living in what part of Russia did you live in?
I lived in Moscow and very briefly in St. Petersburg. It was a long time ago.
Wow. But you've also lived in other countries in that part of Asia. Where, what other countries have you lived in? So
I was trained as a Sovietologist. So I started off, studying Russia, and I studied in Russia when I was in college, and then ended up in the Peace Corps in Uzbekistan.
Wow.
And then I ended up in Uzbekistan for 5 years. I did 2 years in the Peace Corps and 3 years with USAID, of blessed memory. Yes.
Wow. Blessed memory.
That's right.
Wow. 5 years in Uzbekistan.
And then I got banned.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
why did you get banned?
There was an uprising against the government, and the government that was then in power blamed Al-Qaeda and USAID.
Oh my God.
So it was the time of these colored revolutions. And, so because I worked for USAID, I was no longer welcome. And I didn't go back for 13 years. And it was heartbreaking because I knew this place like the back of my hand.
Right.
And couldn't get in. So I ended up, it was like right during graduate school when I was supposed to be doing field work for my dissertation. So I ended up pivoting to study Afghanistan. And I spent about 3 years living there.
Oh my gosh. It's fascinating.
What years was that?
Oh, so the uprising was 20 years ago. It was 2005. I can't believe it.
Wow.
And so then after that, so I started going to Afghanistan around 2005 and then was going back and forth until 2021, right before it all collapsed.
Wow. So I want to jump right into one of my questions here that I want to pick your brain on. So you've written and researched a lot about customs, right, in these places, and spending time there, you really probably get to know behaviors, norms in the communities. And, as an Orthodox Hasidic Jew, so much of my life is, people think that it's all Jewish law that dictates my life, but actually when you break it down, a lot of our behaviors come down to customs. And, we take customs very seriously. The more Orthodox you are, especially the more Hasidic you are, the more customs matter. And, there's a saying in Hebrew, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but minhag Yisroel Torah, that the customs of the Jews is Torah. Like it's as important as Jewish law. And I'm curious to kind of unpack that a little bit and see, what we have what do we have in common with communities in Uzbekistan and Afghanistan, what you've noticed about the way their communities coalesce around customs and what you've seen in the Hasidic world, from the outside. And if I want to see if it matches up and what we can find there.
So, and so next time I actually want to come on the show and interview your father about this topic.
Yes, I know, but he doesn't know. You have I want to hear what you think because I know what I'll say.
Yeah. But I think so the issue of minhag is exactly right. And I think for many Jews, we don't necessarily understand what is law and what is custom.
Right.
And, most of the other societies I study, at least through a religious lens, are Muslim societies. And they have the exact same delineation between what they call urf or adat and sharia, which is law. But custom is there's a huge difference between them. Not always a huge difference, but they inform one another. They play off of one another. Right. And, in the Jewish tradition, they're very, very, it's very important, but I just don't think that many people, we're not taught about custom. We're taught about, this is Judaism. I grew up as a conservative Jew. So this is Judaism. This is how it's practiced. We were rarely exposed to non-Ashkenazi here in the United States, right? Non-Ashkenazi, minhagi.
Right.
It was always, this is Judaism. And we were never exposed to that as even being a thing.
Right. Exactly. So is there a lot, for example, I'll give you an example and I want to hear if they have similar things, but in the Hasidic world, the way we dress, I think is a very obvious one, that it's custom. It's not really Jewish law. It doesn't say in the Torah that you have to wear a black fedora if you're a male, or you have to wear a fur hat, or, even wigs and the way we cover our hair. What does that do? First of all, why do we do that? What does it do for a community? What's the purpose of that kind of attention and commitment to custom versus a commitment to just the written law?
So, well, I think most of the time when we are thinking about custom, and I'm doing a global research project on this right now, exploring custom around the world. And, there's some hypotheses I'm dealing with, but there's a huge resurgence of customary authority right now in many parts of the world. At a time when we would predict its decline, that we're actually seeing the resurrection of customary authority. And I use the word authority because customary leaders are very important in different parts of the world. And I use the word custom with intention. I love Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and I heard your episode about him a couple of weeks ago. And he wrote so many important books and works and essays on tradition. And if you think about the work that he wrote about tradition, the way tradition kept Judaism alive, that I almost wish he'd said the word custom, because custom is something that is evolving and changing. And there was this French anthropologist, Olivier Roy, who said, tradition is the desire to go back to a frozen yesterday, whereas custom is something that's changing, it's evolving, it's adapting. And this is why it's, when religions are suppressed, when groups are suppressed, when Judaism is suppressed, it's easy to keep the customs alive and the belief through custom alive than it is sometimes the law, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So one thing you've written a lot about is sort of the mixture of sort of formal structure and informal structures in societies. What are when you look at sort of the informal structures of various societies, are there any commonalities across them that you find are just have to sort of be inherent for the informal structures to exist over any period of time?
So it is a mixed bag. So you've got to the central hypothesis of my research, which is how do the structures affect, the outcomes that we see? And, so in a lot of places, like for Afghanistan, where I studied, these customary authorities were extremely egalitarian. Really? So there is a famous Pashtun saying that no man can tell another man what to do. And that norm is embedded into their tribal law. Okay.
Wow.
And so it is deeply egalitarian, which means in that society, there's no such thing as a chief.
Wow.
So we think about traditional authority, we typically think of chiefs, right?
Right.
Or like the headman in sub-Saharan Africa or something like that. So what I'm trying to do in this work is open up the black box of tradition to understand how the different, it's very anthropological in a way that, I was just in Guatemala a couple of weeks ago looking at their traditional authorities there. They're also, at least in some of the indigenous areas, very egalitarian. It's hard to achieve a consensus on things. Okay. But on the positive side is that they're very deliberative. And when they do reach a consensus on something, it means that there's buy-in. There are other societies that have very hierarchically structured traditional or customary authorities. And in those societies, it's really easy to scale up and to create armies and do collective security and things like that. But there's always this risk that you have the leader who can be a little naughty, right? And overstep authority and, not be responsive to citizens. And none of these things exist in a democratic framework. I would say that they exist more often in a participatory framework, but not something that we would call purely democratic.
Right.
That's interesting.
How do you define the difference between a formal structure and an informal structure? Because when I think about those things, when I think about the concept of the state, right? One of the fundamental things a state can do is they have a monopoly on violence, right? That they have the ability to punish their citizens, right? Is that true in informal structures, or do they keep sort of cohesion through a different method?
So the way, so you actually hit the nail on the head. You gave Weber's, when I went to graduate school, I called him Max Weber, his classic definition of the state, right? That entity that has a legitimate use of monopoly and the legitimate use of violence in a society. That's what the state is. And so I differentiate between those organizations that come from the state, which are what I call parchment organizations, and then those that are they're not derived from the state. And those are informal, right? So now you can have these situations where you have corruption and organized crime groups, which actually come from the state. They're informal groups whose origins derive from some bad law, right? And we have, they're endogenous, they're endogenous formal organizations, right? But what I'm talking
like the mob with
like
prohibition.
Mob. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you'll have these groups that emerge because of the government, right? And so there's a lot of corruption that emerges and informal organizations and things like that emerge from poorly written legislation or legislation that was actually designed to keep these groups in power. Then there's what I'm focused on are those that kind of predate the state, that don't derive their legitimacy from the state. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't interact with the state or sometimes get their legitimacy from it. I'm now, beginning to study a lot of the customary governance structures in sub-Saharan Africa. And despite the fact that, they have these titles, they were actually created in many cases by the Brits or the French, who needed a way to govern. And they thought that, Africa, there's traditional leaders everywhere. So let's find the ones in each place. And actually, in some places, there weren't chiefs. They appointed them, and that created new traditional authorities. So you see, it is not true that in every case they existed, they predated the state. But in most cases, they do. And so what's fascinating right now is I think one of the reasons people are turning to these things, which we would have predicted have withered away a long time ago, is because people are looking, to solve problems, and they're also looking for meaning.
Right. It's interesting that I don't know, again, because of the community I come from, I feel that I have this certain understanding of it because, and especially about the informal, and I'm not talking about structures, but the informal norms, I guess I would say, that come around. I was just thinking of an example in my head, but even this song, I'm getting very particular, but at our weddings, right? If you're a Chabad family, at your wedding, right? The song that the groom is led into cover the bride's face before the chuppah ceremony is prescribed to us by a norm, right? I could choose to use another song. There's not a Jewish law that says that I have to go with the Alter Rebbe's Niggin, which is what it's called. But you wouldn't do that. It's unheard of for someone to do. And if you do it, you're putting yourself outside of the community and you're saying, I'm different and I'm not part of this group. And it's just interesting that something that, no one can punish you for it. It's not like you can lose, you're not going to break up your marriage or whatever, but it holds there's such a strong pull to hold on to those kinds of customs. And I don't know if you have any insight into that, but
sometimes we just don't know the origin, like baby showers, right?
Yeah.
I'm a mother of 4. I never had anything in my home that was baby-ish before baby was born.
Right.
I try to explain this to my colleagues at work who wanted to have a baby shower for me, right? Or and as soon as baby was born, I'd go on Amazon and order everything and but I don't know where that comes from.
It's so interesting.
Right. But that is a custom. It is a custom, but it's not, I don't think that's law.
Right. It's not. Yeah, of course. But we just don't do it.
We don't do it. So why? The question is why? And where do these customs come from? Which is, they're always very interesting questions. And I think they're very particular to, each community. But, what do these norms do? They give people meaning. They create order in a place. Often the places that I'm studying are weakly institutionalized, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So why do you often see very harsh, criminal laws? Because you cannot rely on a third party enforcer to call upon to solve issues. So you have to rely on what we call self-enforcement. And so it's the self-enforcement that it becomes extremely important for any kind of customary governance organization or any community to survive, especially in weakly institutionalized environments. But often, today, when you're thinking of the Hasidic tradition, you're thinking this is beautiful, this is wonderful, this is something that's keeping this tradition alive. But many times it was not the case that we were trying to keep traditions alive for the sake of keeping them alive. They served some other purpose, right?
Yeah.
There was a survival function, or maybe there was a superstition associated with it. I'm sure that like not having baby things in the house was related to
superstition.
It was a superstition, and that had everything to do with infant mortality.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So often these customs are they're solving problems, but we have lost sight of the context in which they were born.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think I grew up watching, I absorbed everything from my home, right? I watched my parents and then I watched my grandparents, right? I remember when I got engaged, I asked my grandmother, like, how many times do you, when you go to the mikvah, how many times do you dunk? Because there's a difference of opinion. If you're a woman, if you go 3 times or 7 times or some do more. And I took on her custom, right? Her custom, and my grandmother said, I remember my mother took me to the mikvah the night before my wedding and said, I do it 3 times. And my mother did it 3 times. Like, so it's like that has passed down, and it's an interesting feeling. Like if I don't have a daughter, but if I did, and then she said to me, I'm going to do 7 times, I'd be like, what the heck? No, like that's not, even if that's the right, like it's not wrong, but I feel so connected to the ritual that I think it would be really hard for me to have a break with that. It's silly things too. Not having a white Shabbos tablecloth. I know people are going to think this is nuts, but when my mother comes into one of our homes and we don't have a white tablecloth on the table for Shabbos, it kills her. Like it's worse. Like you might as well go marry someone who's a Muslim. Like that's, I hate to say, like that's how it feels to her. Like,
it's betraying the tradition.
Yeah.
Right. And I think so often that like, I think within the Hasidic community, because there's so many like delineations, there's so many communities within the Hasidic community, how to differentiate, your the Chabad movement from the Satmars, right? So where those lines are drawn, and so you can understand. And so sometimes those divisions are clear to you because they differentiate, you from another group. But and sometimes now that's the only meaning they have, right? Is this differentiation?
That's interesting. Do they have that in the Muslim world too? Did you notice, like, are the different tribes, do they have different ways of like small, subtle ways of differentiating between themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, for example, the Taliban, when they came to power, their whole thing is like, we're getting rid of minhag. We're getting rid of custom. We are going to the original OG Islam. But what's really interesting about the Taliban is they practice, like, de facto, they are very Pashtun. They are, like, their practice is not separated at all. I mean, I shouldn't say that. That's a very, many Pashtuns would disagree that the fact that they are
that they're the same
they are
as the Taliban,
but there are certain very strong Pashtun elements to what they do. But they are saying that no, we are getting rid of those customary elements.
Right.
But so many of the practices really are derived from custom.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know if you've studied this at all, but one thing I've always been fascinated by is how Jewish custom evolved after the destruction of the first temple. And I mean, that was sort of a, I guess a necessity being the mother of invention kind of thing. Yeah. But it's interesting to me for a couple of reasons. Number one is, you could argue that some of the best, the most important Jewish documents to come were because of the destruction of the first temple. And that's where the Talmud primarily comes from.
The second temple, you mean? The second temple.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. Second temple. Sorry.
I know what you meant. I translate for you. It's fine.
Thank you. Yes. But the other thing that's also interesting is and this is why I got them mixed up. When the Jews came back to Jerusalem after the destruction of the first temple, when they came back to the area, how did and why did they keep the customs going when they were returned back to sort of their, central location, when it wasn't really necessary anymore as it was previously, when they didn't know if they were ever going to return?
Oh, interesting. That is a good question.
I mean, if you think about it, the fact that, the Jewish life in the diaspora was able to retain so many similar practices, we focus on the differences. We tend to focus on, someone who you should definitely talk to. I'm dying to talk to is, I don't know if you've had her on your podcast, is Michal Beton.
Yeah. I love her. I know.
We've talked about having her on
We
before.
should talk to her.
She has a new report out at NYU. It just came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago on the Sephardic tradition, like contemporary Mizrahi and Sephardic communities in the US and around the world. It is like a comprehensive report, and especially focusing on the United States. They have a whole section on like the Bukharian community in the US. We focus on those differences, and it's easy to focus on those differences between, Jewish communities. But what's really astounding to me is how much liturgy has remained the same. The order of prayers has remained the same. So many things that you would expect to like fall apart, actually, the Jewish community was able to retain. And this is based, I think, both on the interplay between both custom and tradition. I mean, both law and custom, because a lot of things in there are customary. Yeah. So even though like we can focus on like, I don't know, kitmiot, right? Like these kinds of differences, it's easy to forget how much commonality they are. And it is really very miraculous to think about how much the Jewish community was able to preserve around the world in this diaspora.
It's so true. I mean, to think about how the Yemenite Jews and Jews in Egypt and Jews in Eastern Europe all were keeping Passover and doing, like, it's really astonishing. It is amazing. Which kills me that American Jews are like, we don't need this. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's heartbreaking to see. Yeah.
I know. Think about like Beta Israel.
Yeah. Oh my God. Totally. And they didn't even have everything that the other communities had access to. Yeah. So before we move on, I'm just curious, Jen, and I'm going to ask you a big question. Are you overly optimistic or pessimistic about places like Uzbekistan and Afghanistan and all the other kind of, I don't know if it's PC to say third world countries, but how do you feel about the global South? Okay, thank you. South. Yes. Even if they're in the North, but yes, the global South.
So I mean, I'm not optimistic about every place that I see. It's really hard to be optimistic about Afghanistan right now.
Yeah.
But I always tell like my Afghan friends who I have here in the US, it's like, today is not forever.
That's true.
Today is not forever. Central Asia, I'm very optimistic about. I'm actually headed to Uzbekistan next week to do some work on religious pluralism.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Yeah. They're very interested in preserving, they have a very old Jewish tradition in Central Asia, the Bukharian Jews.
Yeah.
And, Christian communities as well. And, one of the things that's very interesting about Central Asia is that there wasn't a lot of tension between Muslims and Jews. Especially in the past 150, 200 years, because they shared a common oppressor, which was Russia.
Right.
And so that made it easy for them to get along with one another. But there's real commitment by the leadership there to preserve that coexistence, which gives me a lot of optimism. It's been hard to be optimistic since October 7th, I think, in so many ways.
I know.
Because I think for many of us, it's helped us see the world in new ways, and maybe ways we didn't want to see the world.
Yeah. I know it's been hard. I know for you, that was a big thing. I mean, do you feel like a different person after October 7th to a degree?
So I think for me, it wasn't, it was October 7th was, being a professor on a college campus is, as being on a campus is not easy. But for me, it started like Tree of Life.
Right.
So I had my bat mitzvah at Tree of Life. I live right around the corner. Knew so many people, who died on that day. Like one of my best friend's mother was killed.
Wow.
When, we know everybody in our little shtetl of Squirrel Hill.
Right.
So while it was easy after Tree of Life to feel loved by the whole community, everyone came together. The Muslim community paid for the funerals and guarded the funerals. There was such uncertainty at that time. Like, was this a lone wolf? Was this, was another shoe going to drop? But yet after October 7th, that sense of solidarity really withered away very quickly, almost instantly.
I know.
And I think that shift was what made October 7th very hard for many of us here in Pittsburgh.
Right.
It was instantaneous.
Well, you tried. I mean, you immediately after October 7th, I remember you did a program with an interfaith program, and you really, I give you a lot of credit because you at least put yourself out there.
I was trying, and honestly, I look back and I was in pain.
Yeah.
I was really trying to protect my community here on campus because I was seeing what was happening around the country, and I didn't want my community, my university, my campus to turn into one of these hellholes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, unfortunately, it wasn't enough and it wasn't the right answer. I was doing a lot of like compassion building with a Muslim colleague. And we actually were doing it where we got called upon to go to several campuses across the country. I think maybe after the last time we spoke, which was fascinating, but left me with a great sadness because I saw just so much heartbreak on so many different campuses across the country. And the fact that the hatred spilled out as quickly as it did and led to such isolation of our students. Instantaneously, I think was very revealing.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
It's, I think that for a lot of people, myself included, the surprise of October 7th wasn't that it happened. I mean, it wasn't a surprise that Hamas hated Israel and would murder every Jew if they could. It was the reaction from many corners of what we typically call the civilized world to the event.
It's true.
I mean, it's still, and I think the hard thing, especially after going through Tree of Life, is like, do we belong here?
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought I would ever ask that question in the United States. Because this is a place that I'm from Pittsburgh. Right. I'm like, this is my town. This is my community. Everyone I love is in like a 1 mile radius from my house. We have like the world's best air roof. Right.
Aww,
but it's, but it is hard not to see it through that lens.
Yeah.
And I think many of us now do.
Well, this leads to another question I have for you. If you had the opportunity to address all the Jewish educators in America right now, rabbis, teachers, what do you think are the ingredients for what a good Jew and a good global citizen is? Because I feel like we're in this, I'm taking out the Orthodox world. I feel like the liberal Jewish world is feeling this tension between what being a good Jew means and what being a good global citizen means. And you're kind of like right at the intersection of that. So what would you tell all the Jewish educators? What should they be focusing on right now?
It's really hard, right? I mean, if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be running some big nonprofit in New York.
Well, that's why I'm asking you, because I want you to tell me the answer so I can do something with it.
So, I think we all have a lot to learn from Chabad and the positivity, just the constant positivity. I think that as soon as Judaism, I've talked about this with my own rabbis, once we become a voting bloc, we're no longer and we're, assigned to a certain political party. Whether, I think this is dangerous for the Jewish community. I think this is dangerous for the Black community. I think it's dangerous for the Hispanic community. We should have diversity, viewpoint diversity within our communities. It makes us healthy. And what you see from the non-Orthodox world is how political most of the non-Orthodox world became with Tikkun Olam, and that Judaism became about, repairing the world and a political message. And I wrote an article about this actually after Tree of Life. Took me 2 years to write because I was like so upset. But what I noticed after Tree of Life is that as soon as that happened, a lot of people in my community wanted to make it political. It was about gun violence.
Right.
It was about Trump. And if only we could fix Trump, or only if we ban guns, we wouldn't have this. And, I saw these movements that were happening, like Jewish moms against gun violence in Pittsburgh, right? Yeah. I was like, this such sorrow. I feel like, of course, we want to look for some cause and isolate it and get that cancer out. And if only we could just direct it at that, we'll fix everything. And so, I saw sermons become more political. Everything became so political. And the more, though, you become political, the more you tune everyone out.
Yeah, so true.
And I really think that this movement, this confusion in these religious movements, especially the liberal, Jewish that have conflated Judaism with a political agenda, with candidates, with social justice, I think has been very dangerous and has led to. It's been dangerous because, number one, like, I don't think the two really have a place with one another every day. Yeah. There has to be a place for faith to exist without politics. And then it's really bad for carrying on our tradition. Yes. It's just, I think it's really hurt efforts to carry on the Jewish tradition.
I agree.
Not to play armchair psychologist to the people who do that, but okay. I will.
Go for it.
I think that those people who go off and yell Tikkun Olam at everybody who doesn't hold their same political views, I think they feel like that's how they're carrying on the tradition.
Yeah.
Right. They don't go to shul for the high holidays. Yeah. They don't put on tefillin. They don't keep Shabbos.
Right.
But Tikkun Olam, like I'm a good Jew because Tikkun Olam.
Yeah.
And they think that that's a replacement for all the other areas in their life that they fall short in carrying on the tradition.
Yeah.
And it's question, Tikkun Olam, is that minhag?
Yeah, that's interesting. Is it a law or a custom? Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, we are supposed to make the world a better place. I mean, I think that is part of the Torah's whole, like, underneath the underlying point of everything. But how and
but
why?
That concept of Tikkun Olam.
Yeah,
like,
it's
making, yes, the Torah is we're all supposed to make the world a better place, but that, is not something that I consider to be.
It's not a political issue.
No.
It's, right. It's so frustrating right now. And I feel the most frustrating part for me personally is that people's identity are so wrapped up in it that even if you want to talk about the issue, they take it so everyone gets so personally offended. And it's like, okay, but we have a problem and we want to diagnose the problem of what we're dealing with right now. And it's hard to, because it became so personal, because politics is personal at the end of the day. And so when you make Judaism political, it's really hard to have the important conversation. So I don't know, I'm feeling pretty pessimistic, but acting optimistic.
We have to be, and look, like, who's going to be carrying on this tradition? Like, well, I worry quite a lot. I mean, we see, synagogue, like in the non-Orthodox world, synagogue participation is plummeting.
Yeah,
religious participation is plummeting. Is this going to be a debate a generation from now?
You know what? I just thought of our new campaign. We should go around to liberal Jewish communities and have signs with, like, Satmar communities and schools and be like, if this is what you want the future of Judaism to look like, you're doing a great job, because this is what it will look like in 50 years if we don't change. I mean, already this week I saw there was a report out of Israel that for the first time, more Orthodox first graders went to school than non-Orthodox or whatever, however they, deter, because they have a complicated schooling system. But the point is like, it's not that far off from happening in Israel, and it's certainly not far off from happening here. And so maybe that's our new campaign. We drag around
Judaism plural, like,
exactly.
And Judaism has always been plural.
Yeah.
And, but to answer your question, like, what is a so after I'm done,
what should
digging on them, what should it has to be a positive message, right? And it can't be a political message.
Yeah.
I do think, you see students, they are so, this generation, I don't know what they are, the Gen Zers, right?
Z, they're young Gen Z. Yeah.
They're looking for meaning. They're looking for community. They don't know how to get beyond their phones. And, giving them purpose.
Yeah.
And how can Judaism give them purpose beyond politics?
Right. Right.
Exactly. We've talked about this a lot in the show, and I'm sure people who listen to us regularly will probably want to mute me after I say this because I say it so many times. But, you know, I actually, to a certain extent, don't see the issue being that people are losing religion or Judaism. They're losing their faith in Western society overall. And if you don't believe in Western society, why would you care about Israel?
Right.
Why would you care about the roots of a society that you either are at best are apathetic about, and at worst actually think is a net evil?
Right.
So if you don't have that mooring, then why would you care about any of this stuff? So I actually think the issue is much deeper than just, you know, not going to shul and you know, not keeping kosher and those types of things.
Right.
And I mean, that's what we've taught students for the past 2 generations, 3 generations, right? Is, you know, to look at power disdainfully. You know, all of the stereotypes are true. You know, the oppressed, the oppressor. These are things that come out of my field, certainly political science, a lot of things, looking at these simple binaries. You know, I've been to plenty of these trainings on campuses where we've seen this all play out. And, you know, for me, it was like Tree of Life that like shook me. I couldn't go anymore. I couldn't listen to people talk about these binaries in like such a simplistic way. But, you know, here's a question for you, though. Okay, Jay. Is Judaism, so we always talk about Judaism as being like the anchor of the Western tradition, but is it? Like,
wow.
When I go to Israel, I got into an argument with a very prominent Israeli historian.
Don't choke.
She's the Clems.
You have an editor, right?
Yes, yes.
Hold on, let me drink some water.
Take a drink. You got really excited about this topic. No,
yes, I'm on pins and needles for this question. I am
very prominent Israeli historian whose name you know, and he said that you know, Israel's important because it's the anchor for the Western world. And I said, but Israel's a Middle Eastern country. And if you think about more than half of the Jews who live in Israel did not come from the diaspora in, you know, Western Europe. They came from beyond, and they tie their roots there. And yes, like Jewish theology is the center, or many, you know, point to the center of Western civilization. You know, that's what Jeffrey Sachs did so beautifully. Rabbi Soloveitchik has done, right? Like really tied Judaism into that. And certainly the Judeo-Christian tradition has been very important. My friend Mustafa Akyol just wrote a really great book. I would really encourage people to look at it on the Judeo-Muslim tradition.
Oh, it's
called The Islamic Moses. Really encourage folks to look at it.
Interesting.
It just came out last year. Is Judaism is this Western civilization? Or is it part of something else, right? Is it something bigger that isn't defined by these categories that we have since given to it?
It's a fascinating question.
That's a question about custom for you, Jay.
Yeah,
that's an excellent question. I would, from my perspective, I would say that it is both. It may not be a direct causal relationship between the two, but I don't know if you don't appreciate the society you live in, I don't know how you can appreciate the society where your ancestors have come from.
Right.
Necessarily.
That are you saying for young Jews in America? You're saying like
yes,
Jews,
yes.
I hear what you're saying. Right.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Exactly. But you know, one thing that'll be interesting. ChayaLeah and I have talked about this, and maybe you can get in on this, Jen. One of the things I've been wanting to do is I've been wanting to do a survey of Jewish college students, and to better understand their upbringings and their education and their perspectives on the world, and then sort of overlay that with what their perspectives of Judaism and their connection to Israel is. And because there has to be commonalities between like the Jews who are on campus, Zionists, who are proud of their heritage, and the JVP Jews on campus. And I would love to see some sort of ethnography or some sort of a study that tries to get to the root cause of how does one Jew end up in one place and a different Jew end up in a different place? Because ChayaLeah and I, for instance, come from extraordinarily different Jewish backgrounds, very, very different. But I think we are almost completely aligned on our perspectives on Israel and Western society. So I think it'd be a really interesting study to analyze something like that.
I totally agree. And, I have 4 kids and my oldest daughter's 13. And we were talking the other day about, family history and where different relatives came from and the Georgian side. And there's like Serbs, like my husband's side, like there's, a big mix. And I said, you're like my father's family came from what is now Ukraine, but they're Jewish. She's like, well, Jewish is a religion. It's not an ethnic group. And I was like, I see. Like, it is very hard to explain because when you talk about it in this way, it sounds like pre-modern, right? Right. Because we don't accept identity. But these categories that we have, that like the whole concept of right, is something that predates all of these concepts of state or ethnicity. And so it's very hard to explain that. I'm trying with like my kids to explain what this is, but this is really hard to understand. Yeah. And it's hard to explain in a way that doesn't like rattle the categories that they're taught. And my kids go to Jewish day school. Okay. Right. So, but the idea that, ethnicity or religion, like doesn't matter. That's so much a product of the American experience that like a Jew in Europe would have no problem understanding that's a station. Right. A Jew, like, why was I a Jew when I lived in Russia? Because a Jew was not a Russian ever. Right. A Jew can never be a Russian. I was trying to explain this to my children. But given the categories that they're taught, this makes no sense. And I think so much of what we see from these movements that you've described is like trying to take Judaism and put it into these contemporary categories. And to me, what it means is that people don't know their history. That's it. Totally. There's just no understanding of what is Judaism. People may know what Rosh Hashanah is, but we've done a really bad job at explaining what is Judaism.
Totally. I'm asking this question because some of my students listen and I want them to hear your answer to this. Okay. When you travel outside of the country and you are in the countries that are, what did you call it? The global South, and maybe third world countries, do they hate America the way that the protesters on our campus hate America? Do they view America as this like awful Satan, the way our own kids do?
I will gladly show you the lines outside U.S. embassies in most of the countries that I work in.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And this is called a leading question.
The lines to get visas and how many times I've been offered bribes to get people visas.
Really?
I'm powerless in this regard, but nobody knows that. No, and I've never taken a bribe.
Have you been offered hands in marriage?
I have been offered gold, right? I mean, there's a joke when I was in the Peace Corps in Samarkand in Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
Like there's a joke like half the bazaar is half empty today. Where's everyone? New York. Right.
Oh my God.
And if you go to, like Brooklyn, like Brighton Beach is just, full of, and a lot of them are from Samarkand. And so the U.S. is a great place of opportunity. And most of the rest of the world is not obsessed with politics like the youth in our country are. And they want to come to our universities and they want to study and they want to have the incredible opportunities that we have. So no, the world does not hate the United States.
Well, we should cut that and make a clip out of it because all these idiots.
They may get annoyed with our politics. It's strange though. Like, I mean, I people outside the United States love Trump.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to be the Friedman taxi driver, but like, oh, your president, stop, he's strong, he's good. I'm like, okay, he's like our president. I'm like, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So true.
I mean, they find them absolutely entertaining. Right.
That's so funny. Totally.
Right.
And they understand him. They understand him, I think, in a way that a lot of Americans choose to not understand the way he thinks and works.
He understands power.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay. We don't have a lot of time and I have a million things I want to ask you, but what is happening in Ukraine? Can you just do like a quick synopsis? Cause I know you've been and
I was just there I was there like 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Give us a little...
It's a tough time. And, Russia I actually went from Ukraine to Israel this summer.
Oh my God.
I got to experience bomb shelters in both countries.
Yeah,
I went with my 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And, you go to Israel, you're in a bomb shelter for, I don't know, a few minutes, the the missiles come.
Right.
My husband was actually there during the Iran episode.
Right.
Yes.
You told me. Oh my God.
He was like with you.
I know.
Nearby.
I know.
But the Russians are merciless.
Really?
This is 6 hours of pounding.
Really?
Just nonstop. So they start at like midnight and it's all night long. So no one's sleeping. And it's
and is it
terrible.
Hitting civilian? I mean, is it hitting civilian areas?
They've gone after civilian. They're going after Kiev in ways that they haven't before.
Wow.
They're going after, and they're very specific in their targeting, like hitting American factories.
Right.
Really. And what they're trying to do, they could have done this without actually invading the country. They could have killed the country off economically and just discouraged anyone from investing in it.
Right.
But it is horrific to watch. There's a whole young generation. Men in Ukraine can't leave the country because they're expected to fight. And you're seeing, I wouldn't say dwindling morale, but the war's gone on so long that they have such a high attrition rate. The Russians have a far higher attrition rate. We don't actually know the numbers of Russians killed, but we know it's significantly higher than the Ukrainians because they don't seem to value the lives of the soldiers they're sending. But we're at really like a stalemate right now. And we've been at that for a while. And so I think what Trump is trying to do is, we can only Trump knows what Trump is trying to do. But, I do think that there was some hope among the Ukrainians that it's been pleasantly surprising that, Trump kind of ran on the fact that he was going to sell out the Ukrainians, and he hasn't. And au contraire, he's like he's a neocon.
Right.
For what I can tell. So they're pleasantly surprised at, providing defensive weapons. But it's going to require some kind of, we're not seeing a military solution emerge. And wars don't end until someone wins. Right.
Okay. Is this a Putin issue? Like if Putin dies tomorrow of natural causes, is this war over? I mean, do the Russian people?
That's a good question.
Wait,
before you answer that, I do need to go.
Yeah, you go. Well, I'll continue.
But you guys keep going.
Okay.
We'll
nice
have
to meet you, Jay.
We'll have Dan.
We were done with you. We were done with you.
Yeah, obviously. But thanks so much, Jen. It was great, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd love to. Right. We'll
Safe
force
travels.
my dad.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
Wait, so I want to continue on this conversation.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Do you have a little more time?
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Do the Russians care about this war at all? I don't get a sense that anyone cares.
Well, they do care in so far as the government has made this about their pride, about the return of their empire. So when I talk to Russians, when I go to Central Asia, even Central Asians who are in the Russian media sphere, you can hear what they talk about Ukrainians, and this was a plot, or, they have justified this to their population in a certain way. So it's hard to say, will there be determination after Putin to fight this? No one knows.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I did know. And it's really hard to say what Russian public opinion is, but they have certainly been like riled up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you get these people to fight.
Yeah. Interesting.
To think that this is classic dehumanization. You get people to think that Ukrainians are less than human. They're dogs.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you can kill them.
Right. Gosh, Russia is such an interesting, you're a Sovietologist, so I shouldn't even start this conversation with you, but Russia is such an interesting place. I mean, the number of wars that they've been in, they lose many of them. They don't have a great track record with winning wars, really. I mean, World War II was kind of an anomaly.
They love, everything in Russia is about World War II. Everything. The popular culture is revolves around World War II.
Right. It's crazy.
It's the Great Patriotic War. That's what they call it in Russian. It's not called World War II. It's called the Great Patriotic War. Yes.
Wow.
And, so much of imagery and popular culture has to do with their victory over the Germans. Yeah. So much of it.
Do you see, I'm going to ask you one last question. Do you, when you travel and you talk to all of these interesting different communities and groups, do you find yourself digging into your Judaism? Do you use some of the tradition and the teachings? What are the pieces of Judaism that you wish you can give to these kinds of communities? So
I was teaching in Guatemala 2 weeks ago, and we did havruta.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. No, that's amazing. Yes.
It's a great method, right?
Yes,
to teach.
Yes.
And, to me, it's very important. It used to be that I never hesitated to tell anybody I was Jewish. I think, after, I was stomping around Afghanistan after Danny Pearl was killed.
Oh my gosh.
And so, after that, I kind of didn't really, and someone told me, in Afghanistan, never tell anybody you're Jewish. Just don't.
Wow.
So I didn't.
Wow.
And I brought a lot of Afghan friends here to the US. They had no idea that I was Jewish.
That's so funny.
But they came to my kids' b'nai mitzvot.
That's nice.
They've been very curious about the tradition, and I have them living in our eruv.
That's so nice.
They were like, "What are all these huts?" Sukkot,
for Sukkot, yeah.
Yeah, they got very excited that Purim was a Persian holiday.
That's so cute.
Because they speak, Persian.
Yeah, that's so funny.
So, yeah.
No, havruta is a great one. For those who don't know what havruta is, because we have some people who might not know, there's a tradition to study in partnership. So you would walk into, the way my kids learn all day, basically in yeshiva, is the teacher might give a introduction to a topic, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And then you get the sources, whether it's from the Talmud or whatever source. It could be about anything. It doesn't have to be Jewish even. And then everybody breaks into pairs and you study in pairs and you read it together and you discuss it and you tear it apart. And it's the best way to learn, I think. I haven't seen a better way.
So I have a colleague who's from Korea, and she says the Koreans are learning havruta.
Oh my God, I love it.
It's
great.
A thing. Yes.
It's so great. It's interesting because now that I'm thinking about it, with all the tech problems that we're seeing and everybody wringing their hands over, what are we going to do in schools about tech and AI? Havruta could be the solution to that, where you just put everyone's laptops away. And because frontal teaching, I think, is over, but sitting across from a peer and just learning together is probably the wave of the future, which we've brought in from thousands of years ago.
And so is that a minhag, right?
Yeah. I guess.
Right. So, coming full circle to where we started, to me, what is the future? If we can think about those things.
Yeah.
Right. That bind us together, that are really deeply intertwined with our religion, that are not political.
Yeah.
I think we need a break from politics, and everyone's just over the top.
I know.
So
totally. Ugh.
Yeah.
I had another observation about learning that I've been thinking a lot about as an educator, in liberal Jewish spaces that I've been in. And because it's so different than the way I was educated, I noticed that often they'll give you a source sheet and, they'll pick a topic like, I don't know, respect. And they'll take 3 random quotes from different parts of, one may be biblical, one will be from maybe the prophets, one will be from ethics of our fathers. And they'll just like, okay, here's how you learn about respect. But the problem is, if I wanted to teach someone about Harry Potter and explain Harry Potter, I wouldn't just pick 3 random quotes from random places. Like start at chapter 1, and read chapter 1 and then chapter 2, and then you go on to book 2 and book 3. And I feel like a lot of the gaps in where we are educationally in the Jewish world is because we're not doing that. We're pulling pieces out of thin air that don't tell a full story. And so we have to go back to like Genesis 1. And like when you understand the Torah and then you understand, then you could talk about where you see respect and how, etc.
I have to say, like, when I think about my Jewish education, going to Hebrew school 3 times a week, like, not a great model, not a great way. I didn't learn Torah in Hebrew school.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right? I didn't learn havruta. I didn't learn, so many, it was as an adult when I was raising my kids. So I wanted to be more conscientious about how I was raising them, how they were learning and practice at home and, making Judaism about joy. Right. Like Shabbat, like the joys of our tradition, making it a joyful thing. Yeah. Not as like, and that joy of Judaism, I just wish, every young person had, right? Yeah. Rather than seeing it as a source of affliction or having to explain Israel or this. Yeah. No, it's this common history, common tradition, that there's no such thing as a good or bad Jew. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And one of the things that I love and so rare is here in Pittsburgh in our community, Pittsburgh, and I think I mentioned last time we spoke on the other podcast, is that like Pittsburgh and New York are the last 2 urban Jewish communities left in the U.S. Yeah. And that a lot of the Jews fled to the suburbs. Right. But in Pittsburgh, I think in my neighborhood, we have 17 shuls in the city.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
We shouldn't have 17. We can't sustain that many. I know. Right. But, it is what it is. But I grew up around Orthodox. I grew up around Reform. There were 3 conservative shuls in the neighborhood. We were all together.
It's a richness. Yeah. You're describing a rich culture with possibilities and choices and a thriving community. And a lot of Jewish communities are just not feeling that way right now. I think there's a lot of, what's the opposite of inertia? It's like decline.
But I think it's about all of society, right? Yeah. Just as we talk about canaries in the coal mine. Yes. I think that the health of our communities, and it's really interesting because you're seeing, something of a religious revival. Just as I talked about the revival of customary authority, there was a paper that just came out last week. We could put it in your show notes. Yeah, I would love that. It talked about the religious revival around the world, and really there is a revival of religion at a time when we would be expecting greater secularization. Right. Just as and I think people are really looking for meaning. In the case of tradition and custom, I think we're seeing a revival of it because people are disillusioned with governance. Yeah. I think there's
right. And if we can, that's always good. If we could keep away from extremism and have a religious revival that is just normal, it would be a game changer for this young generation. It really would. But I worry that extremism is always just like lurking, and ready to pounce. And I see with some of my students, like they get pulled into literally like scary extremist, even in the Jewish world, I'm saying and I want to say to them, no, pull back, pull back. Like you need that moderation. And I don't know, there's probably some guardrails that we need to protect ourselves from, but well, there's so many problems. We need to start our own I'm going to stop my other 2 podcasts. You and I will have our own podcast.
I told you I could be Yael.
I'm going to have Yael and Jay and my father all hate me now, but that's fine. That's good.
But I think there's so much space for positivity. Yes. And how do we teach that? And I know that you're such an incredible role model to the students that you work with. Well, and just, inspiring them. And reminding even these very difficult, I was in Uzbekistan last summer, not this past summer, but the summer before 2024. I was in a grocery store and in downtown Tashkent, and a woman asked me where I was from. And I said to her in Uzbek, I'm from the US. And then she told me I was killing babies.
Oh,
I didn't get to the fact that I was Jewish.
Oh my God.
I was just American. So,
wow.
Sometimes it was
that's crazy.
Shocking comment to hear. If I would have told her I was Jewish, forget about it.
Wow. Wow.
But I don't know why I mentioned this, but
no, that's listen. Okay, last question. Then I'm letting you go. What are you reading right now? What do you read for fun or for work?
I'm reading a lot of Jonathan Sachs.
Oh, really? His books are so good.
I just love it, and
they're comforting.
They're comforting and they're grounding.
Yeah.
I mean, I read a lot of academic stuff, but
do you still read or are you going ChatGPT? Tell us the truth.
Oh, I have to read.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
and I have to read because it's the reading and the writing that makes the creativity happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That is
so
true.
when you read something like he said this, that's when you get your brain, the juices flowing, as we say. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure there's ChatGPT papers, and I'm sure I'll probably be writing them sooner rather than later.
No, but you won't. You won't.
I think some of the big ideas that we really want to play with are not going to come from that. They're going to come from serendipity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Well, Jen, I mean, I could go on and on. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to have you on again. We'll get my father. Maybe he'll.
I want to interview your father about this question.
I think we should. Custom. I think it's a good idea, actually. I hadn't thought of that before. I want to know
how he understands it.
Right. I'm curious too. I wonder. Let's do it. We'll have him. We'll let him. We don't let him in interviews, but we'll make an exception.
No, we'll interview him.
Okay. Good. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, ChayaLeah.